Hello and welcome to the Yoga in Black podcast, where I have conversations with Black yoga and wellness leaders from across the country. My name is Tierney McDowell, and I too am a yoga instructor and the creator and host of this show. Each week, I'm joined by Black yoga instructors, meditation instructors, or holistic wellness professionals to have a conversation about anything under the sun and the moon. We'll talk about a large variety of topics with the intention for you as listeners to get to know us, get a feel for the vibes, and find your next yoga instructor if you're in search of someone to learn from. All episodes of the podcast are pre recorded, so if we talk about something that happened a while ago, bear with us. We're doing the best we can with the time that we got. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to the Yoga in Black podcast. My name is Tierney McDowell, and I am the creator and host of this platform. Today, I am joined by Laia, and I already know Laia from working with a yoga entity for the last couple of years, I think it was, and just an amazing, amazing instructor. So I am so excited for you guys to get to know her. Laia, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Tierney. It's so good to be here. Yeah, it's been a little bit. I mean, I guess it's 2022 already, so it has been a couple of years. It's wild.
It's time is flying. Because we knew each other through the virtual world, we've never actually met. You're located in Florida. I'm currently in Texas. So it's been really fun to be able to even build relationships or some type of camaraderie over the internet the last couple of years with coronavirus being a big factor in why.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually gonna be going to Dallas, I think, in a couple of months. So maybe we'll
Really?
actually get to meet in person. That would be nice.
Absolutely. We'll have to grab coffee, lunch, something. I don't know, but we're
Yes.
definitely linking up. That's fantastic. Oh, that's so good. That made me so happy. Oh, well, tell us a little more about yourself, like where you're from. And I know that you let me know that you're not only a yoga instructor, but a professional figure skater and a translator. I want to know about all of that because that sounds so fascinating. I've been a super huge fan of figure skating my entire life.
Oh, well, then maybe you won't like anything I have to say about it, but
I'm
I
not
mean, yeah.
surprised.
Right, I mean, come on, I mean, yeah, so I'm Laia, and I'm from Barcelona, from Catalonia, which a lot of people know as Spain, but we're actually a separate country, but part of the colonizer, right? We speak our own language and stuff. And yeah, so, and I've been in the US for a little bit over a decade. I got over here while I was skating professionally with one of those big entities, right? um, and yeah, then I met my partner and I decided to stay for a while. So I've been here since then. And even though I really tried to keep figure skating as like the biggest thing that I did with my life, like coaching and stuff, lucky for me, yoga came in at one point, and I have shifted most of my focus to yoga and also to writing, which I think it was my first love, even though I didn't know at the time. But
What things do you write?
I write a lot of things. So, I mean, first of all, I have so many notebooks. So people that are like, I don't write. I'm like, no, please, like you probably do. If you're creative in any way, I'm pretty sure you're right. But yeah, so I write a lot of, lots of journals, lots of random quotes and things like that. But I also, I'm writing my first fiction or most likely sci-fi book. And I write for a few online and subscription companies, for yoga and meditation articles and things like that.
Oh, that is so awesome. I love hearing about new Black authors because that was something that was never really given to me as a child. And I was a big reader as a kid and just fell off on it, but I'm trying to get back into it. But I want to hear more stories from us. So that I'm excited right now. Like what's the plot about? Or is it okay to ask?
Well, I don't think I'm there. I'm not ready to share yet. I don't think I'm at that point where I'm still kind of really working on the characters and the world building, and I have a couple like better readers that I pass things through and we just exchange ideas. Um, Yeah, but if I had to say what it's about yet, I don't think I know yet. So
That's
that's where
totally
it's at.
understandable. That's
Yeah.
exciting though. Oh, I cannot wait until this book comes out.
I'll let you know.
Yes, yes, yes. So tell me a little bit more about what got you into yoga from figure skating.
Well, at the beginning, it was I'm traveling around the world and we just did random things. And so I think the first class I took was probably in New York City. Don't even remember the name of the studio. I'm sure it was a trendy studio. And even though it was a hot class, and I remember swallowing my own sweat and being like, why the fuck am I here? Right. I did enjoy the fact that I was able-bodied and flexible and young, and it was fun, right? And so I returned to it in that way several times. And then I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and my husband was like, hey, I've been reading that it has a lot to do with, stress. And I was like, I'm not stressed. Yeah.
Famous last words.
Right. And so, yeah, so that's when, and he was like, he said, I have some tapes. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, yeah. And he let me borrow the tapes. I found something to play the tapes in. And this was, I mean, this was like 15 years ago. So there were still some tape
Still
players
some
in some places.
VHS around,
Yeah. Yeah.
a little bit.
Right. And yeah, and I just started meditating a little, but I was one of those that I was like, I can't meditate. How do you sit here and blank your mind? This is bullshit. I mean, all the things.
Yeah.
And then I tried physical movement again, right? I think I heard someone say moving meditation. I was like, I'll be there. Um, yeah. And then I mostly started practicing online through some of the platforms I teach at now, which is pretty cool. And it was a space where I could practice without having to worry about the performative part of it, which is, it's just all I knew was performing, and everything I did was performing.
Yeah.
And so it just gave me my own space to be like, you know what, I am going to do the chaturanga today, or the next day be like, she can talk all she wants, but all these poses, I'm going to be here in child's pose, right? And no one's there
Mhm.
to judge, not even myself, right? So yeah.
Exactly. I love that. And I love that differentiation you just mentioned about the fact that your job at the time was so performative, and how it's funny how yoga now seems quite performative, especially in the social media eye, but it was a place for you to find refuge away from that performative aspect. So I really love that you bring that to, I'm sure you bring that to your teaching too, that it doesn't matter if you want to, like you said, if you want to do the chaturanga, do the chaturanga. If you don't, take a nap. Like, it's all about you and what you want to do. There's no performance to this. It's just you. I
Right. And
love that.
I think that's because I had teachers that allowed for that, right? And that made space for me to just be as I was. And then I was like, oh wait, hold on. So I don't have to do the thing. Right.
Yeah.
Because used to being a high level athlete, I was always told what to do.
Oh yeah.
Right. And like, now you do this, now you go here, now you must do this. You can't behave this way, you can't do that, you can't touch, right? And then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden I was in a space where they were like, you could do all these fun things and look super fun doing it and feel really fancy, if you will, or you can just take a few breaths and chill. And
It's that freedom. It's
right,
freedom. Yes.
right. And so now I have a tendency to always choose, if between sukha and sthira, I always go for ease. I'm like, there's plenty of
Mm-hmm.
hardship in life. I am here for the ease.
Hell yeah. Amen to that. Um, It's funny that you mentioned hot was your first experience with yoga. I think that just across the board, especially if were you were introduced to yoga in the States, correct? Or back home?
Yeah, those first classes were definitely in the States.
I
Yeah.
figured, because it's always when you hear or ask somebody, how'd you get started in yoga? Hot yoga. Because I'm the same. It was the same for me too. It's just amazing how much the country latched onto that, and that's
Yeah.
most of everybody's gateway into it. And it's wild hearing the stories of people's evolution through the practice, because they start with hot yoga and are absolutely enamored with it because of the sweat and all of this other stuff, but then something happens where a shift changes and they're like, I don't need to be sweating this hard to be doing this, and I'm changing something inside of me that's not just my body. It's a beautiful change to see, especially Like I had mentioned, the way yoga is portrayed in this country. I love seeing it when it happens for sure. But it's always so funny to me when folks are like, "Oh, I started with hot yoga." I'm like, yeah, we all did.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you
I
started
did.
here, you probably started with hot yoga.
Right. And I remember it was that one class because I really did not enjoy the sweating. I did not enjoy that there was a dude in there telling me I couldn't drink water. And I was like, what kind of nonsense is this? Right. I was
Oh
like,
no.
oh yeah,
Mm-mm.
it was back in the day when like I'm pretty sure it was an Ashtanga class. And the whole like regimented and like I remember it was
Yeah.
dark and like and now I'm like, why was I there? Again, if there are so many things that dysregulate our nervous system on a daily basis, like driving, interacting with people, like everything, right? And it's like, and then I'm gonna go right after I've done that all day into a hot room where I'm going to do more of the same.
Yeah.
Sure, if that's your jam.
Yeah. Wasn't mine.
Right. And again, I think as we were saying, to me, it's way more than just sweating, right? Like, honestly, if I don't sweat one drop in a yoga practice, I'm absolutely fine.
Yes.
Um, and if it's connecting me to a part of myself that is, I don't know, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more calm, a little bit more present, why is it that there's all these big studios and stuff that want to put a wall against that? Like, no, you cannot go past that wall, right? And then I just find it deceiving,
Yeah.
right? Because the true practice is to go that direction, and there are so many places packed with people, right? Yogis, quotations, right?
Mm-hmm.
um that I don't really know what they're doing. I really don't know what they're doing.
I wish I had an answer for you because I don't either. All right, so I want to know a little bit more about your transition from just solely student to student and teacher. Like, what was that like for you as far as what sparked that interest to learn more and guide others in the practice?
Well, when I transitioned from being a performing figure skater to just being a person and coaching, that's also when I started to handle and move through life with Crohn's, and I just started to see how beneficial it was for me to breathe, how beneficial it was for me to take some time every morning to notice how I felt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was teaching Zumba at the time, which that was a different life.
That's some high energy stuff.
Right, right. And I just came from being a professional athlete my whole life, and like my body was destroyed at that point.
Yeah.
And I was adding more high impact, and I was like, I need to start ending these Zumba classes with some stretching, right? So I started doing that, and then I started doing the same with my skaters. I was like, there's something to this, because I remember being dysregulated anytime I competed, right? And I was like, I need to
Mm-hmm.
start to help them somehow. And obviously I knew I didn't have enough tools. And so I reached out to one of my teachers in Europe, and I was like, hey, I'm not ready to do a 200-hour. I can't afford it, but I'd love to pay you to work with me together however we can. And we did that for a few months. And then I talked to my parents. I was lucky at the time. I was like, y'all, I know I've tried college before, they didn't really work out and whatever, but like I'm already teaching this, I just need a paper. Little did I know. But at the time I thought I just need a paper. I know everything I need to know to do this. And yeah, so my parents helped me out. They said, find the place that you want. And I really took the time. I was in Miami at the time, and I really took the time to go to a few studios. And now, not surprisingly, the ones I thought would be the one where I did my teacher training were not, because I
Yeah.
actually went and took a class and I was like, ooh, something's off, right?
Yeah. Heebie jeebies.
Right. And I ended up at this smaller studio where I just went to the one teacher was doing the teacher training, and it was going to be a small group. And I was like, I can do small groups. I don't do a lot of people, but I can do small groups. And I went to one of Claire's classes, and she rocked my world. And I was like, okay. Like, I think we were like crying in goddess pose. And I was like, I don't cry in public. What is going on? And that was that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I also did my 200-hour at a smaller studio in my hometown, and that experience from what I hear was much more enriching than some of those larger, more corporatized yoga studios that offer trainings. And I'm forever grateful to them because I had a similar experience where I was searching and looking and picked up another job so that I could afford it. And once I found them, took a few of their classes, ended up crying in the middle of the class multiple times, and just I'm so grateful to them. And shout out to the small studios out there that hold it down in the yoga community, because y'all save people's lives and you don't even realize it.
Right. And that's part of what I do as well. I teach teacher training at a small studio, and we made it through the pandemic and we're still making it. And
Yes.
that's where I put my energy. I have done, before, I've spread my energy in different studios and like trying to whatever, right, reach more people. And
Yeah.
for me, it's at the small studio where I can truly build community and know everyone. And it's like sometimes like it's cool to start a teacher training group and be like, hey, so and so has a conflict on this date, are y'all cool with switching? And everyone's like, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? you
Yeah.
you can't do those types of things at really large places. It's absolutely beneficial as well, and
Hmm.
there's of course pros as well to going to a larger studio, but I'm a small studio gal.
Same, same, same. Because we've both had that large or studio experience, and I will always choose the smaller studio. Like one single person that had a passion to open a space and build a community. I want to be a part of that. I would
Yeah.
love to be a part of that so much more. I'm struggling to find that here in Dallas right at this juncture, but I'm working with another friend of mine who's opening a space, and I get that feeling that it's going to be like that very much with that space. So I am eager to get that ball rolling so bad because the community needs it. There's a lot of corporatized yoga here, and it shows.
Yeah, yes, it does. And it's sometimes it's confusing as a yoga teacher to understand why people choose, right, like the bigger places.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. But again, like I sometimes I feel like, oh, I have to be for everyone, and that's not true. I'm not for everyone, and I
Yes.
don't need to be, and that's the thing. Like I've never been a mainstream person.
Me neither.
So trying to make myself fit into that, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work.
Exactly. Because I was just telling someone that the other day. Like, I feel like oftentimes trying to be a popular yoga instructor is the downfall of a lot of people, because that's not who you are. And that's what I thought I was trying to be, because I'm like, I need to, get bigger classes and this and that. And this is how you're more successful. And I knew I wasn't measuring my success based on how many bodies were in any particular space that I was teaching. It was about the impact. And it bothered me so much that that was a focus that I even had, because I don't want to be popular. I don't want, a whole bunch of people to know who I am, but I do want to at least impact lives and, build something that's a little bit more meaningful than just how many people can you bring in.
Right. Yeah. And I think the numbers thing is such a stupid illusion, right? It's like, well, okay, sure. Of course I can become really good at posting whatever it is that people want to see on social media
Yeah.
and tell you all the things you want to hear so you'll come to my class. But again, as a trauma informed and accessible yoga teacher, like that is not my focus
At
at all.
all.
And if there's 25 people in class, I mean, I don't know, I pride myself in my cueing and my modification and variation skills and all that stuff, but 26 people to give options for at all times. And when a lot of these studios focus on the vinyasa flow portion, right, you cannot break the flow or whatever the fuck, it's like I cannot support you as a student. We're just all packed in there, meant to have this experience. And it's like, if there's 10 of you, I can certainly have my attention on everything that's going on around me. I can be more grounded, I can be more present.
Say that again. I will always prefer a smaller group over a larger one for that very reason. It is so difficult to make sure that 20 plus people are having the experience that you kind of want them to have, or at least, or like, because, and see, and I even say that, and I want to backtrack because I don't necessarily like to curate an experience for people. I like to hold space for them to have their own experience. So for any instructor to come into a space and just think that it's going to be this very magical moment that everyone's going to have, no, they're not. And
Mm-mm.
especially if you've got 20 plus people in there, at least 2 to 3 to 5 of them are going to absolutely hate what's going on because it's not for them, right? Or whatever it is that you're trying to provide is not for them in that moment. So instead of trying to curate the space, just hold space.
Right. Yeah. And yes, absolutely. And I think for me, accessibility, it does, of course, it means I have blocks for you to use. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But it means I teach to the people in front of me, right? So
Yes.
I teach to who shows up. And of course, that there are labels in the description and all those things in the classes, but I really don't care if everyone that shows up, the energy is a certain energy, and we're gonna choose to move in a certain way, and I'll go
Yes.
with that. And with a bigger class where there's an expectation of what I must deliver, right? And like I'm getting stressed just thinking about it, and it's like again, it's that performative, and
Mm-hmm.
like and lights and microphones, and I'm like, holy crap. And again, I think I needed to experience it to know it wasn't for me. And that is why I'm mega grateful for it. Right. But
Yeah.
now it's so much easier for me to see a space that I'm like, oh, yes. Than that when I'm like, not for me. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
absolutely, it's power for me and it's power for the people that I want to support.
100%. 100%. I love that so much. I would love to know your theory of how we got to the point where we now have studios that have opened and created all of these different guidelines and policies on how to present the yoga. In like, for example, no Sanskrit in your cueing or no chanting or things like that. What's your theory on how we got there?
First of all, I think it's insulting to yoga to even say those things, right?
I know.
Um, and I just want to say it loud and clear because, like, if anybody thinks that I'm for that, I'm not. Like, use all the
We are
Sanskrit
not.
that you want. Bring all the woo-hoo that you want. Like,
Yes.
whatever woo-hoo means. Like, um, I think it's because corporate America has to be able to put things in boxes to be able to sell it, right?
Hmm.
And especially if it's being sold as a product that someone can purchase as a business, right? It's an actual package, so it has to be so well explained and so basic, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, the easiest thing to do is do what some of these corporations do, which is find some of the top teachers, offer them something that's pretty irresistible at the time, get them in, record them, get all their skills because it's being recorded all day long, and come up with something that has all the pieces, right? So it's like, oh, we have learned that by keeping the lights at this, or that color, people enjoy it more. Okay, the only lights allowed are this, and that color. Um, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
People enjoy flows that are a certain length or that have a certain amount of these poses or those poses. Well, that's the only sequence that you can teach. Right now, the word hot is popular, the word accessible is popular, right? The word inclusion, diversity, all those words are super popular. Put those words everything you have to. Use pictures of the only diversity that you find in your studios everywhere. Don't pay the people and make a revolving door. So by the time they get burnt out, there's a new group of excited people that come in.
Hmm.
I think that's how we got there, or how they got there.
Definitely. Corporatizing, or I'm sorry, capitalizing on yoga has definitely or made it shift into something that's practically unrecognizable. Because I know when I first started with this space, I had my concerns, but I was in a position where I needed the money.
Same.
And so I kind of put that to the side, especially because I knew that I wasn't strong in all of those things that I wanted to teach in regard to yoga, that I would likely fit there because that was where I felt quote unquote comfortable. But I knew that I wanted to evolve past that. That I was still very much in a stage of learning what type of teacher I really wanted to be because at that point, I had only been doing like a couple classes a week, after my full-time job for a few years. And I don't think that was enough for me to really understand what type of teacher I would be if it were, something that were a bigger part of my life and able to actually, be involved with a little bit or a few more people. So when I approached them and then got, more information on how things were run, I was like, this feels wrong. Like something in my stomach just twisted, but I knew that it would be a space that I would be able to be a little bit more financially stable. So I'm like, okay, you might be able to deal with this enough because of the fact that it is more accessible, and that's a big tenet for you. And it's more about trying to get people involved in it, which is a huge tenet for you as well. So you might be able to bite the bullet on the no Sanskrit things or things like that. I'm like, no, it in the long run, absolutely not. Just
In which
drained me.
in which part did that feel accessible?
And that's what I'm saying too, is like once I realized, like, no, that is all part of it being accessible, is, you know, giving all of what it is out there and letting people choose if that's something they want to do or not.
Also pricing it in a way where people can afford it.
That part. I'm
And
so
I
sick of expensive studios. It's why.
and you know that and the thing is, it's that if those studios raise their prices and the small studios don't, you go back to the, oh wait, if that studio is more expensive, right? Which I don't know why people think this way, but y'all, whatever. It's like, oh, if it's more expensive, it's probably better, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, but so then everybody has to raise their prices, right? And it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's hurting. I think it's harming more than it's benefiting people at this point.
Oh,
And
big time, which
yeah,
is a big reason why this platform exists, is because I've always noticed and known that the racial disparity is there because of all of these tactics that are in place. Overpricing your memberships or your classes to try to target people that you think are the ones that can afford it.
only placing your studios in certain neighborhoods because they're the rich
Exactly.
neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's very disheartening to be a Black person or just a person of color at all in these spaces, knowing that that's what they're wanting to do. And I even had that experience with a studio space where the location that we had was, I'll quote unquote it, call it up and coming. It was basically just being very gentrified.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a slow process. So you've got all these new shopping centers and whatnot popping up in these neighborhoods that most of the people that live there can't really afford. And our space was located in one, and the studio wasn't doing well because they were trying to target people that don't live in that community. And like, and you're pricing this at a place or at a price point that folks can't afford. And that's going to be folks that don't live anywhere near here, and they're not going to want to drive over here to come to this yoga space. So if that's the business model that you're going under, it's not going to work. It's never going to work. And it's really sad that that's what's happening with so many of these spaces, and that whole um accessible yoga thing is becoming such a trend, I guess. It should have always been that. Why does it have to be a key phrase now? Like,
Right.
your yoga should have just been accessible regardless of if it's called that or not.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I find that, a lot of smaller studios during the pandemic had to close as well.
Yeah.
So the offer for both teachers and students has been reduced, and
Yeah.
I think I'm making it my job as a teacher to go back out into the community, and because those are things I did before, right? Like I went and took yoga classes at other studios and met other
Yeah.
teachers, and it felt good. And so I'm really actively trying to start doing the same. And as I start traveling again, I want to start teaching workshops again when I go places, and
Yes.
I think I can complain about all these things all day. And it is relevant, I think, to do so in certain spaces, because I think people would like to know sometimes, oh, okay, I could be supporting this studio instead of this one. Um, maybe they're the same distance of driving and you're just going to this one because your friend is going to this one, right? And you're just following what everybody else is doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly that. All right, to transition to something a little bit more hopefully positive than some of that. I want to talk about your personal relationship with yoga and what it's done for you in your life as not only a person of color, but someone that's had to, relocate cross country or not cross country to another country. What's yoga been or what has it done for you?
Well, I think it's like the only, not the only, but one of the only constant threads in my life. From my first day of teacher training, where I was told I had to have a sadhana, which is a spiritual practice, I have not skipped a day. And I won't, right? Because that's just who I am. And again, like I need to practice what I preach. Does it mean that it looks the same every day? Absolutely not. But that is why it's relevant, because I can adapt it to whatever I need. I do try to start every single day with journaling, and that I succeed at, I would say 99% of the time. But then again, like there used to be a time where I felt like I had to do asana every day. And if I feel like I have to do asana every day, I'm probably in some way or another transferring the same thing to my students where they feel like they have to be doing asana every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now, obviously, with Crohn's disease, there are days where I feel freaking fabulous and I get up, I'm like, let's do this. Right. And that day, whether my mind feels like it or not, I will do something a little bit more, right? Like just more powerful, more energizing.
Mm-hmm.
But there are days where I wake up, I'm like, okay, we're just gonna try to get to the kitchen and grab some peppermint tea before I puke, right? And on that day, I will probably go back to bed and do a couple of twists and breathe, and that's my yoga. And I can feel just as good about that, right? And it's about finding things in my life that support the state that I'm in. Not necessarily being like, well, I must be this way because that's just who I'm meant to be.
I love that. Yeah, that was something I struggled with once I turned this into my job was keeping up with my sadhana. It was difficult to do so because I was just so burnt out. So I don't have Crohn's or anything like that, but I do have GERD. So it's real similar where some days, I'm feeling really great and want to do things. And other days, the whole GI system is just like, sit your ass down. You're not doing a damn thing. And it happened more often because I was working so much that I was stressed, and stress is a big factor in GERD. And that inflammation was just near constant, and I was still kind of attached to move your body every day, do some asana every day. And I'm now getting to a point where it feels so much better to be adaptable in what my sadhana is. Plus I'm in my 300-hour training right now, and it's just helping me detach from a lot of what I was formerly thinking was important, and it isn't. But yeah, I love that it's such a constant for so many of us, that it helps bring balance back in a world that is completely off the scale.
And that's the thing. And and that's why, to me, when I talk about yoga, and when I talk to other teachers and people are like, oh, what can I do to grow in my teaching, it's like, you need to be trauma informed. Like there is no reason for any of us to not be trauma informed at this
At
point.
all.
I mean, yes, of course, that it costs money to train, right? But I've been lately actually taking advantage of scholarships, because in the same way that I offer them for people to be able to take my trainings, I want to be able to do the same.
Yeah.
Right. But as you become more trauma informed, you realize that I have Crohn's, you have GERD, someone else has stress, someone else has anxiety. Like we're all showing up however we're showing up every day. And really my only job as a yoga teacher is to be like, hey, I'm showing up like this. I'm acknowledging that you're showing up like that. I don't even need to know what that is.
Yep.
I just want you to pause, take a few breaths, and check in. That's all we're here to do.
1,000%.
And where that leads, some days into some asana poses, some days it's into some breath and pranayama, and some days again, we just take a child's pose or a really long yoga nidra and we call it a day.
Yoga nidra saves lives.
Right? Absolutely. That should be a bumper sticker.
Man. Let me throw some more capitalism on this yoga thing and oh my goodness. So if I were, because I haven't actually taken a class of yours yet, but if I were to just say, could you guide me through what a class experience with you would look like? Tell me what that would be.
Well, I like to start my classes with connection. So whether it's online or in person, I always try to have some tea. So at the studio that I teach at, there's several of us that love tea. So everybody brings tea. Some people like to have some don't, right? But I like to start my classes with conversation. And I'm huge in bringing daily life into the yoga practice because that's what it's for, right? It's to help us live through life. And so I always, not always, but oftentimes, sometimes things happen while I'm driving to the class, right? And I'll be like, today I was driving here, and
Yep.
so a lot of classes start that way. Um, and then from there, I like to start with pranayama and meditation. So there's always a little bit of that. I do teach a class a few Sundays a month called, or yeah, a few Sundays a month called Soulful Sunday. And on those, I offer journaling as well. Um, and then usually move through whatever flow we'll do that day, whether, and again, sometimes it's not flow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a little bit more hatha, right? So more static postures. Someday I do more restorative. And then I always like to, again, end with meditation. Long shavasanas are life. So I'd rather do less movement and more shavasana if I
Yes,
can.
absolutely.
And then again, connecting at the end again, I think it's super important. And not just me with the students. I want them to get to know each other and support each other. I'm just there to be like the reminder of like, hey, we're here together and we could do these things.
I love that. Um, and I'm sorry, I apologize if these questions are very random, but that's just
Yeah.
how I operate.
Perfect. Same.
But with the coronavirus, how were you able to transition from things being shut down to the virtual world?
Well, I had been practicing since I started practicing online, so that wasn't very different for me. And I'm kind of like I like computers. I'm little no, I wouldn't say like super tech savvy, but I can figure it out and I enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
So I immediately called my friend who owns the studio and I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. You're gonna grab a TV, a random TV at home, right? And so we set it up immediately, and we transitioned right away. And again, like at the studio I teach, we're really into making it accessible for teachers as well. We have some older teachers, and some came to the studio by themselves and filmed from the studio, and everything was set up. We had all these post-it notes everywhere and like, this is the button you push for this is the one you push for that.
I love it.
It was fun. And then it finally gave me the chance to be like, finally, this is what I've been wanting to do. I want to teach more online. So it kind of forced me to continue to do that more. I had just started teaching for Eckhart Yoga around that time, so that gave me an opportunity to do more of that because at the time they needed more videos. um yeah, and I mean, to me it was just an easy, I mean, I wouldn't, not easy, but it was an interesting transition. I personally kind of enjoyed it. I like the virtual space.
I agree. It's definitely one that I don't think people you mentioned it though, but I don't think a lot of people think about that as the accessibility for the instructor itself. Um, we always think about accessibility for the students, which is 100,000% important, but often the instructors are made to just kind of provide the accessibility rather than are you being given any type of accessibility. And that really brought a lot to the forefront in several places that I was teaching at the time, is that folks just didn't realize either there are people that don't have internet, don't have computers, don't know anything about some of this tech stuff, even despite whether if they have it or not. And that can be an issue. And thankfully, several of the places were able to do very much what you guys did, allowing folks to come into the studio space to teach and record what they needed to with the studio's equipment. But that wasn't the case for a lot of places, and it's very sad.
And
I wouldn't have thought of.
we still have all our classes hybrid because, and we
Oh,
record some of them because again, like we have some students that realized, oh my gosh, I still want to practice with you, but you know, we have some that have children with disabilities, right? And so it's easiest for them to stay home. and
yes.
and they might be like, hey Laia, I really want to come to your Friday class, right? Like, which there's some students that maybe they take it online all the time and they're like, but I can't make it this Friday, can you record it? Absolutely I can.
Yeah.
So again, just adding these levels of accessibility that in person I think is a little bit harder, because in person, yes, okay, I can make sure that the space is accessible, I can make sure that there's tiered pricing that is accessible, I can make
Mhm.
sure I have props and all these things, but if you can't get to the space, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, it was really disheartening that several of the places that I taught at no longer teach at, but once the studio started to open up down here, they started pulling back on how hybrid the offerings were. I'm like, that's a problem because there's still people out there that don't want to go to studios or can't for whatever reason. And shit, I was one of them as the instructor. I'm like,
Right,
it's really triggering to be in this space with all these people that just don't care about what's happening right now. And it's hard for me to, you know, try to give that energy and, preach all of this love and acceptance of yoga when we're still leaving out the fact that A, we're in a pandemic still, and B, we're not being able to help everyone that wants to be helped,
right, right.
including the instructors.
Right. I'm in a period where my car has decided to not want to work.
Mm,
And then, you know, so I was sharing one with my husband, which is absolutely fine.
yeah.
But then his also decided not to play, right? However, I have moved so much of my work to writing, which I can write from anywhere. And I teach a
Yeah.
lot of online classes, which I can also teach from anywhere, that it did impact some things, right? And I had to shift
Mhm.
a couple of things. But if I had done that when I was teaching 15 classes a week at a studio, first of all, I would have lost all my income, resulting in not being able to fix my car, resulting, you know what I mean? Like it's just that cycle that I think it's a cycle of like privilege that I think once, I don't know, maybe people get to a certain level that they don't see this stuff happening
Yeah.
down here anymore. I don't know.
It's sad that that happens too, because it's like as soon as anybody was giving the leeway or given the leeway to do anything similar to what was happening before the quarantine period, they just completely forgot about, anything else. It's like, oh, I can do it now. Great. So everybody can. No, not everybody can. That's why we were there in the first place.
Right, right.
Oh my goodness. Um, it's just interesting to see the progression of, especially here in Texas. I don't know what it's like in Florida, but they just don't give a damn here in Texas. Like I still mask in public and people look at me like I'm crazy and I just eat it because I'd rather wear the mask than not.
Right. Yeah, I think down here, I mean, I don't think, I know we were home for like 90 days without going anywhere. But Florida, at least this area never really shut down. It always kind of stayed,
Yeah.
you know, which obviously, yeah, it was great for the economy, but that's about it.
I'm wanting to know about more of what you wanting to come of your time as a yoga instructor in the near future and beyond that. What's life looking like for you in regard to this beautiful, beautiful thing?
Well, I'm writing more and more, which I have found to be a great way to share yoga with people because again, it's just I'm writing about the same subjects, right? And but I can go into depth. And oftentimes, depending on who I'm writing for, I need to do some research, right? And so it also expands my knowledge, or I might remember things that I did in like my first 200 hours, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was that thing I used to like practicing whatever, right? Whether it's a pranayama or a yoga posture or whatever.
Mm.
So I'm continuing to do a lot more writing, and I'm partnering up with more yoga companies to do that for, and I'm hoping to at some point write a yoga book, but I haven't. I'm just trying to form the idea of what I want that to look like. And my focus right now is on just my small the yoga studio that I teach at locally, right? But that's just a few hours a week. But my main focus is on my workshops and retreats, and a lot of that is online, and a lot of it is in person. But I'm just back into expansion mode and not being. I mean, I've been in Florida for so long. I left once this year to go to California, but I don't know. I used to travel back before the apocalypse, and I want to get back to doing that. So I want to go home and see my family. So
How long has it been since you've been home?
since 2019.
Damn.
I know.
I am really looking forward to your writing projects. You'll have to
Thank you.
send me some of the stuff that you've already done that's, out in the public, because I would love to read.
Yeah, actually, one of my articles was published on Eckhart Yoga today too. So I'll
Nice.
send you that one.
So also, because I know there's a lot of instructors out there, and honestly, just about anyone that just wants to get their foot in the door on a lot of things, your collaborations with other yoga companies. Can you tell me a little bit more about what or how that began, and what things that you did in order to get into that position?
So again, I like to practice what I preach, right? So I have found that I don't work well for people, because again, like, I can collab all you want, we can exchange ideas, but your ideas can probably be as valid as mine. I don't do hierarchy. So I again, through this ability to be able to connect with people online like yourself, right? I have found that I can create community in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And lost my train of thought.
Welcome to the club.
I did just hold up. Where was I
Gotta
going?
dance and wiggle the thought back in.
Yeah. Ask me the question again. Hold up.
So what or how did you begin with the collaborations with other companies?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm learning that as I grow my community of people that are alike and they do similar things or things that complement what I do, I work well with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I'm trying to do most. I like to collaborate with people that I get along with well. So for example, Eckhart Yoga, that's who I was practicing with when I started my proper yoga practice, right? And so the first teacher I ever reached out to was a teacher from there, who eventually, when they had auditions for Eckhart Yoga, said, "Hey, I think you would be perfect," right? And that's how I ended up there. And most of it, I find the things that work for me are connections like that. It's like, one of the companies I write for, one of my friends from Eckhart writes for them, and she's like, "Hey, I really love writing for them," right? And like, if you're wanting to write more, send them a sample piece, and that's how I got into that. But it's also what I do for my friends. I like to open the door and be like, "Hey, come on in," because I have had so many doors shut at my face that I won't be the person to do that to someone else, right? So if I feel like one of my friends or someone I know is a good fit for something, because I don't need to do all the things either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone reaches out to me, "Hey, I'm looking for a teacher for this or that," there's a chance I'm that teacher, but there's many chances that I am not. So the more I continue to build community, the more those opportunities show up for all of us.
Oh, we're very similar in that respect. Um, with starting this yoga in black thing, I've had a lot of folks, come to me asking about, teaching opportunities as far as me doing it. I'm like, nah, but I know a gang of really cool people. I'm gonna just go ahead and put that opportunity out there to somebody else, because I don't think I'm the right teacher for it. But I know somebody who is. I think people forget how important building relationships are in a lot of these opportunities that come along for a lot of people. It's really about synergy. Is that the word I'm looking for?
You're asking the wrong person. English is not my first language, but I think so.
I know I'm always struggling with my own freaking language. I don't know words. But no, it's really about find, like you had mentioned, finding what actually does work for you, and the opportunities just kind of build from there, getting to know people, working with your friends. Like, you're like, people don't understand, your friends are doing some really awesome things, and to help them in any way, shape, or form will help you too. And they'll put your name in places that you never expected your name to be. And it's that
Absolutely.
simple. It's not necessarily trying to, have the most perfect social media account so that someone can be attracted to that and then find me there. Like, no, it's literally who you already know.
Right. And also getting to know yourself as a yoga teacher. The
Mhm.
more, I used to be like, I want to teach yoga for everybody. And now I'm very specific. I'm like, no, I teach accessible yoga. I teach yoga for people that are disabled, for people with chronic illness, BIPOC, Paralympians, Olympians, right? Like I have
Yes.
specific things that I do. And so it's a lot easier for me to not waste time because there are emails that come through that may be exciting ideas, but
Mm-hmm.
if it's not what I do or something that I might be interested in developing, right? Because sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not my niche, but that is something that I'm interested in learning more about or whatever. But yeah, then I find more opportunities because I have more direction
Mm-hmm.
instead of like I used to say, when someone asks me, what do you do? I teach yoga. Well, shit. That could, as we talked
That
about, that
means
can
so
mean
many
so many,
things.
so many things, so many things. So how are you going to hire me by me just saying I teach yoga when
Yep.
and then that's when I think competition arises because, well, if I teach yoga and you teach yoga and they teach yoga over there, that's freaking threatening. But
Yeah.
if I teach yoga for this, and this, and I know my strengths are this, and that, you don't threaten me, you compliment me.
Mm-hmm.
And we can work together and we can create together, not with everyone.
Yeah. But at least knowing that you'll have something that's a little bit more accessible. Well, that'll be the theme because you are someone who knows what they want to teach and how they teach and where they're most effective. And someone else that may be more effective in a different position can still work in the same space, and all of you will thrive because you are reaching two different targets. Like, just because we're all yoga instructors doesn't mean we're all aiming our arrows at the same target. We're all, aiming at so many different things. And I think people forget that.
And even if you and I taught the exact same thing and put the exact same whatever labels behind our name, there is no way that your classes and mine would be the same. I
No.
mean, I mean, maybe to Karen who shows up and can't tell which one's you and which one's me, perhaps, right?
Oh my God.
But if she comes to more than two classes, she's like, oh, I go to Tierney's because blah 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 blah, and I go to Laia's because blah 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 blah, and we're just different people and we have different experiences. And if we choose to show up authentically to teach and to share from our heart, there's no way that we can, be the same.
That's so funny you brought that up because I swear I taught at a studio space where me, there were three Black women in total, including me. And I'm I'm so certain that there were several or members of that space that thought that all three of us were one person at one point. Especially because one of them also had a name that started with the T, and we were like
Oh, that's
kind of close to
justifiable.
the same height ish. But I had like I'm always changing my hair though, so that was a more distinctive thing for me. But I guarantee it that they all thought we were like all the same person because they came in one day, or this one person came in one day and she's talking about all this stuff, and I'm just like, what are you? I'm like, and I knew that I looked confused. I don't, hide my emotions off my face very well. So I know that I was just looking at her completely dumbstruck. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, lady. But I'm, trying to, be as, accommodating as possible. I'm like, yeah, okay, uh-huh. And then she mentioned something very specific, and I'm like, what? And she's like, well, remember when I told you? I'm like, you didn't tell me anything. Like, I think this is my first time meeting you, so I don't know what you're
Okay, but that's kind of wild because that sounds like they had like full on conversations. It's not like, well, it's in
exactly.
passing.
That's the other part about it. I'm like, you didn't tell me any of these things. I can laugh about it now, but in the moment I was just so annoyed because it's like, we don't all look alike. What is
Yeah.
that? We don't all look alike.
Or, or when people just consciously, like, I've known them for a long time and I'm like, I know you avoid saying my name because you have no idea how to say it. And it's like, but that is why I make it a point to ask people their name as many times as I need to until I learn it because I'll be in this and in the uncomfortable space. So
Mm-hmm.
someone else feels comfortable being like, you know what, I've gone to class for 2 months and I don't know my teacher's name. Ask me again.
There's nothing wrong with
Ask me
that.
again. Like, I don't
Right.
care.
Because I don't remember yours. So I'm going to ask you every time you come into this space. Like I will recognize your face, but I cannot recall your name. So I'm going to ask you until I finally remember it. And if I'm mispronouncing it, I'm going to continually ask you, how do you want me to say your name?
Right.
Which is why I stressed it to you as well. And like, I knew how to pronounce it already, but I always want to make sure that I'm not screwing it up at some point in my mind, because my mind is like that. The mind of an ADHD person, you think you know one thing and the next thing you know, that was not what it was. Like the reality is totally altered.
And I think and that's okay, right? And I think that's what I try to do as a teacher as well. It's like I mean, mistakes or failures like that, it doesn't even matter. It's just part
It's
of
human
learning.
nature.
And it's part of learning. It's like if I don't make a mistake by saying your name wrong, I'm not gonna know how to say it right. If I don't make a mistake by saying left instead of right, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna make you
Yes.
feel like you have to be perfect. And
Correct
just
me. Please correct me. Like say something. I always say that in classes too. I'm like, if you hear me saying something that doesn't sound right, I am totally fine with you letting me know that I messed up. Like that's
right.
okay.
I always find it fascinating when I'm like in my jam, and just like going, and I obviously said left instead of right, and I can just feel it in the air, but no one said anything, and then I'll be like,
Yeah. Like
okay,
check me if you want to or need to, because I'm not trying to have you do the same thing on the same side over again. Are you kidding? Like, you already did that. Like, don't have to do it again. Like, but it's like a lot of like that'll bring up a topic. It's that authority that they give to instructors, I guess, or it's just that authority that's been ingrained into all of us.
but is it right? Is it given or is it taken?
Yeah, because I'll have such a hard time with getting people to interact with me in classes. Like talk, laugh, sing along to the song if you want to. Like it doesn't have to be that I'm the only one up here talking and you guys are just silently, doing the things that I tell you to do. I hate that. I am not a dictator. I am here having an experience with y'all too. And it always ruffles feathers, and I can tell when it does is because it messes with people's internal thing about someone's in front of me instructing me, I must be quiet and respectful to them. Like you're not disrespecting me by being interactive in the class. What's disrespectful is being disruptive. But there's a difference between disruptive and collaborative.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I think that there are different teachers teach different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
for example, if you've always gone to a class where the norm is that the teacher is at the top of the room at their mat and they're the only one talking, and all of a sudden I go to your class and you're like, no, you need to talk to me and whatever. Like I may have several reactions. One of them can be, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna watch everybody else and see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. Another may be like, this is not for me. Or another one would maybe like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I need. And I think that that's important too, because
Oh
as
yeah.
as teachers, we're not for everyone.
Mm-mm.
But it is important to create a culture in our classes, because again, if I want to be a safe space I can only create myself, right?
Yep.
But if I'm being aware of how I carry myself and the kind of conversations that are being had and all those things, then that may really resonate with someone. But someone else may be like, no, I like the class where nobody talks and I just do my thing or whatever, right? Or there's a dictator teacher. But if that's what you like, I would try to explore why.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just a fascinating thing that I had just realized when we were talking, because like I had said, I am one of those that doesn't really care if you have a laughter outburst in the middle of class. That's totally fine. It's interesting to see how ingrained it is in all of us to have like just make that the default
Mm-hmm.
of someone in the front of the room is speaking, and they're the authority of the space. I must do this or that. And I'm like, I think that's probably also why I struggled in school.
Yeah, I actually, yeah, and I did teach, yeah, I like chatting. I did teach a couple webinars recently, And, when I teach teacher trainings or workshops or whatever, whether they're online or in person, like, I'm not the authority. I'm just sharing the things that I'm doing. I'm trying to, like, just work together, learn, inspire each other. Right. And so
Yeah.
I like to ask people things. And it's so
Yes.
hard when people don't want to engage. And it's like, if you're here, be here, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're showing up to class, like, be uncomfortable and say something, because it's not just that you are not letting your voice, shine through or your truth be spoken, but you're also like, people need to hear things that you have to say.
Yes.
You never know who's listening, and they might be like, oh my, I really needed to hear that today,
Yeah.
and I think that that's how we start to inspire each other. And if that's the culture in your classes where you're like, let's chat, if you're showing up to that class, like, just come play the game, otherwise just don't come. you know or come anyway,
Yeah.
come anyway, but you know what I mean, like, just sometimes, even if it's one day, just get out of your comfort zone and say something, chat to your neighbor or whatever.
That's one reason I'm grateful that there are so many teachers out here now, is because people can have a different experience with every single different person that they take yoga from, or receive yoga from, because some days they might need something like what I offer, where we're all learning from each other. But sometimes folks just tell me what to do today. That's just tell me what to do. I'm gonna be back here in my corner. Just tell me what what leg needs to go there.
Right.
Or what intention I need to set, whatever. Um, but it's I wish more people would take advantage of that and just actually give themselves that ability to be okay with moving around to whatever works for you within that day. It doesn't have to be the same thing every single day.
Right.
Be adaptable in what you receive as
And
much as
again,
what you give. Yeah.
right, and you don't have to do asana every day, right? Like, you really
Exactly.
don't need to. Like, you can meditate, you can do pranayama, you can go for a walk in the woods.
Oh, and the days that I will, because I taught a class that was every Sunday at a boxing studio, and cycling as well. And I gave them a variety, and it kept them on their toes. But the days that I'm like, so it's a meditation day, you could like kind of see like the groan in their face, and they're like, but you just finished cycling for 45 minutes. Why do you still want to do more? Like, it's okay to be all right with a variety of different things. But oh man, I love when that happens, because it's like, nope, you're expanding here, and sit with that feeling that just came up for you when this was presented to you. Like, why did you feel that? That's part
Yeah.
of the practice too. All right. Well, I think we are approaching the end of our time together. So I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to learn where they can receive all of the awesomeness that is you.
So they can go to my website, which is laiaboveyoga.com. If you're not sure how to spell it, I'm sure it's in the show notes somewhere.
Absolutely.
And I have a retreat coming up in November here in Florida. So it's a fall retreat, but it's in mid-November because it's Florida. And we did it last year in October, and making a fire was a little too warm, so we moved it to November this year. But it's a great rustic space, and we have early bird and accessible pricing as well, and scholarships. So hit me up. And what else? What else? What else? Yeah, I'm on the social platforms. All the things are Laia Bove Yoga. And I'm also an Insight Timer. So if you want to practice online, it's a free app. So that's why I like to mention that one, because I'm on there too.
Nice.
So, and then obviously on Eckhart Yoga, which is my favorite virtual studio on the planet. So
Awesome. Well, Laia, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and being able to have this conversation with you. It was a blast.
thank you, Tierney. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person in a couple of months.
Yes, we'll exchange numbers right after this.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laia.
Thank you.
And a big thank you to joining in on this episode as well. Next week, we're joined by Latoska Asbury for an awesome conversation. Every Tuesday, we're airing a new episode, so be sure to check back in next week on your favorite streaming site, or check us out on YouTube. You can find us at yogainblack.net, or the Yoga in Black podcast on YouTube, or on Instagram at yoga.inblack. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.